Howdy there, gang, Silver Mongoose here, back again with something a little bit different. So I just finished watching seasons 1 to 7 of the modern episodes of Doctor Who on Netflix. Now, over the past, 3 years or so, everybody seemed to be watching Doctor Who. So I started watching it, and I wasn't really a fan at first. Now, when it comes to sci-fi, I'm used to things that are typically, in my opinion, a little bit better written. So things like Firefly, Star Trek Next Generation, The Twilight Zone, even something like Red Dwarf, which is silly as well, tend to have a bit stronger dialogue, at least at the beginning. And then Doctor Who starts off with things like living mannequins and people being eaten by garbage cans and these super lame aliens. And like the main enemy is like a dustbin that has a plunger and a paint roller and says exterminate and kind of wheels around slowly and isn't terrifying at all. But I'm not here to talk about which show is better than which show. I'm just trying to explain that at the beginning it was a really slow burn for me. But now that I've watched all 7 seasons, there are a number of episodes that I actually really enjoyed, and I wanted to share those with you guys. Now, in case you haven't watched Doctor Who, what it's about is an alien called the Doctor that travels through space and time in a police box and uses a tool called a sonic screwdriver to save people's lives and alter time and go on all sorts of adventures, and typically he has a human female companion with him. Oh, and this other tiny little thing is if the Doctor is killed, he generally can regenerate into a new person, which is a good idea to keep the show fresh. For the most part, I'm going to try to stay fairly light on the details so as not to spoil anything, but if I do cover anything, it's mostly going to be the stuff that you wouldn't already see inside the preview trailers that are at the end of every episode. The first episode I really enjoyed was a 2-parter. It's called The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, and it's set in 1941 London during the Blitz and centers around a group of orphans. And it also has this creepy child that wears a gas mask, and he seems kind of unaware of his deadly abilities. This episode also introduces us to a new character, Captain Jack, who is a highly flirtatious, charming, bisexual, time-traveling con man from the future who is much less scrupulous than the Doctor, and I think is just a fantastic character. The other 2-parter I really enjoyed was called Bad Wolf and the Parting of Ways. Now, originally I thought this was going to be a really lame episode because the preview showed them on a space station that was recording TV shows like Big Brother and The Weakest Link, and it really seemed super lame, but it ended up having some really good writing, some touching moments, some intense moments, and also has Captain Jack in it, which is always a positive. In Season 2, we have The Girl in the Fireplace. The Doctor finds a spaceship that has time portals leading to multiple parts of a woman in the 18th century, Madame de Pompadour. So the Doctor uses these portals to continuously save Madame de Pompadour from kind of this clockwork enemy, and that relationship kind of leads to the Doctor being like her guardian angel, as well as they develop feelings for each other. Now, partially because this episode shows a more human side of the Doctor, and partially because I just really enjoyed the concept, this episode really stood out for me. Now, Doomsday isn't really the best episode. It's kind of silly, but that's why I like it. It has 2 of the Doctor's main enemies, the Daleks and the Cybermen, both invading Earth at the same time, and their interactions are kind of ridiculous and just amusing to watch. In Season 3, we have another 2-parter, Human Nature and the Family of Blood. And in this episode, the Doctor takes his consciousness and hides it in a watch, and then assumes the life of a human, John Smith, teaching at a boys' school in 1914. Seeing the Doctor as a human, with elements of his real self bleeding through, was very interesting. And the episode also features some really tough decisions and a kind of self-analysis, I guess, of the Doctor by John Smith, which was very interesting as well. One of my favorite scenes, however, is one that involves just the boys of the school and how they're, I guess, entering a battle, we'll say. And it's done in a very human, down-to-earth way that really touches upon the gravity and nature of the upcoming war. Now, Blink is an absolute fan favorite. Almost everybody loves this episode. So the Doctor gets trapped in 1969, but needs to communicate with somebody in the modern time, so he has to use kind of inventive means to get messages to her. So this girl, Sally Sparrow, is in a mansion that is being surrounded by a new enemy called the Weeping Angels. And they're like statues that can only move whenever you're not looking at them, kind of like a Boo from Mario. Blinking is actually enough time for these enemies to move towards you and eventually get you. So the Doctor is trying to help her from the past as these enemies are closing in. It's a really suspenseful episode, really cool enemies, and it really stands out on its own, even without having the Doctor really in it. Season 4 has another great two-parter called Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. The Doctor and his new companion Donna travel to the universe's largest library that has been sealed off for 100 years. We are introduced to a terrifying new enemy, the Vashnarada, and also a really cool character called River Song. It's really difficult to talk about why this episode is great without completely spoiling it, so in case you haven't seen it, I'll just stop right here. Turn Left was a great episode that focused on Donna and what the world would be like if she had not become the Doctor's companion. Now, this one kind of appealed to me because the It's a Wonderful Life concept and alternate timelines are something I've always found really cool. The Stolen Earth is a truly epic episode. Characters from multiple seasons of Doctor Who band together and try to save the Earth. Need I say more? This one's actually part one of a two-parter, but I found part two didn't really match the awesomeness of part one, so I didn't include it in my list. The Water on Mars was a special episode from Season 4. The Doctor travels to the first Mars base in 2059. Shortly after he gets there, an infection breaks out that threatens everyone at the base, and if they leave, potentially Earth. The Doctor, because he's a time traveler, knows the outcome and knows what is supposed to happen, but is really struggling with helping the people there and letting things just play out. And without a human companion there to kind of keep him in check and bounce ideas off of him, he kind of loses it. And you get to kind of see a darker aspect of the Doctor and the nature of his kind of time-traveling lifestyle. Now, in Season 5, I really enjoyed an episode called Amy's Choice. Now, Amy and Rory are the new companions of the Doctor. In this episode, it's been 5 years since they have left the Doctor, and they moved to a quiet village, and they started to raise a family. Or did they? This episode features an enemy called the Dream Lord, who puts the Doctor and Amy and Rory in two kind of, we'll say, universes. One is a dream universe, and one is the real universe. And they need to choose which one is the real one, because there is death coming at them in both. So if they choose the wrong one, they'll just be killed in their sleep in the other one. So it's not really a new concept, but it's done really well, and I enjoyed it. Vincent and the Doctor might be my favorite Doctor Who episode. In this one, the Doctor and Amy go and visit the famous painter Vincent van Gogh, and of course there's, all sorts of weird alien stuff going on. This episode is highly emotional and has had many people, myself included, in tears. The actor that played Van Gogh did an amazing portrayal, and the lower key feel of the adventure in this episode proves that, you don't need CGI and epic battles and stuff to make an episode good. Season 6 features the Doctor's wife. In this episode, the Doctor believes he's found evidence of other people of his kind. He goes to investigate them, and when he does, he finds a woman who contains the essence of the TARDIS, which is his sentient, time-traveling spaceship. So the consciousness of his spaceship is inside a woman. And the woman who acts this out does a really good job. And it puts the Doctor in the really uncommon position where he's not the smartest man in the room. The Girl Who Waited is easily one of the saddest episodes of Doctor Who. In this episode, Amy gets split between two timelines. The normal Amy, and then one that's been hardened by decades of being by herself, being isolated, having to defend herself day in and day out to survive. Now, Rory goes in to save the current timeline Amy, but if he does so, then the other Amy will cease to exist. Technically speaking, they're both his wife, just one is older than the other one, so he's got this really difficult choice to make He has to weigh the odds of the multiple plans of what to do and what's in his heart and make the right decision. I found this episode also very interesting because it raised the question of altering time, and if you're altering somebody's timeline, are you not, in fact, murdering the possible future that would have taken place otherwise? In Season 7, we have a new companion, Clara, who actually I think is fantastic. But the episodes didn't really live up to Clara or the Doctor. I think that the Matt Smith Doctor is a great Doctor, but I think his episodes aren't as great as earlier ones. Just like, I don't think anything in Season 7 really stood out to me. The best part about the season is the interaction between Clara and the Doctor. The thing that I noticed about the modern Doctor Who seasons is the later ones keep trying to get more and more epic and cram more and more into each episode. So something that would take an entire season to build up to and conclude in the earlier seasons, in the later seasons they might introduce it and solve it in one episode, maybe two, and it kind of makes the whole thing feel cheap. So those are the episodes of the modern seasons of Doctor Who from 1 to 7 that I really enjoyed. I'm not a Whovian by any means, but I did enjoy what I watched. But if you're a fan of Doctor Who, what did you think of the episodes that I chose as my favorites? Are there some in there that you cannot see why I picked them, or some episodes that you think really I should maybe give a second chance? Maybe they're some of your favorite episodes. So this has been Silver Mongoose Videos, and remember, classic gaming never gets old.